Hey everybody. So I have some good news and I got some bad news. So the bad news is I sustained a little bit of an injury, as you can see. It hurts a lot. I was making myself a sandwich, and it just one thing led to another. Mm, it hurts quite a bit. Because of that, I've lost quite a bit of blood, and I will be needing a blood donation from one of you. Um, Unfortunately, first of all, we need to know about blood types in order for you to give me a proper blood donation. I need to make sure you're the right blood type. So that means, due to today's circumstances, we will be doing a lesson on blood types. So yeah, so enjoy.
All right, welcome everybody to today's lesson. My name is Mr. Hlady, but of course you can call me Mr. H if that works better for you. And welcome to today's lesson. It will be on blood types. And before we get started, for anyone who is kind of curious about the video prior to the lesson, yes, my sandwich turned out just fine. Thank you for asking and thank you for your concerns. So before we get going into this lesson, I want to go over the learning goals real quick. So by the time this lesson's over, I want you to understand the types of blood and how they differ from one another, and understand why we need the right type of blood when receiving a blood donation or a blood transfusion, and we'll get all into that in just a little bit. So before we get started, I just wanted to warn you, you're going to need a piece of paper, a pencil or a pen, and a ruler or some sort of a straight edge, because you will be drawing charts in this lesson. Another thing, just before we get started, if you need to pause or rewind the lesson at any point, please do so. I know this isn't the ideal way of learning. I wish I was in the classroom just as much as I'm sure you all wish you were in the classroom right now. But these video lessons are sort of, they're interesting and they have their advantages, and this is one of them. So please feel free to take advantage of that. If you want to pause the lesson to write anything down that you need to remember, definitions, examples, if you want to draw some stuff, go for it. And of course, if you're still confused over anything, obviously I can't answer questions while I'm doing the lesson, but if you are confused over anything, remember it, feel free to email me and I will help you out. So, question before we get started really into this, what exactly are phenotypes? Maybe you might remember from a genetics class before, but think about that for a second. What exactly is a phenotype? What are phenotypes? So, phenotypes are the observable physical properties of an organism. They are determined by their genotype, a set of genes that the organism carries. A couple of examples here is height and eye color. A couple examples for myself. As you can see, I have what is called the hitchhiker's thumb. So that's a phenotype. That's a physical characteristic that you can observe, that you can identify me by. And I'm pretty tall, especially compared to my little butler friend here. So those are just two examples, some more examples of phenotypes that apply to me in particular. So why exactly does this matter? Well, blood type is actually a phenotype, even if you can't necessarily see it with just the naked eye. You inherit your blood type from your parents, similar to phenotypes. If you have brown eyes, it means probably your parents had brown eyes. If you have curly hair, it means one of your parents probably had curly hair as well. So why exactly do we have different blood types? Well, every cell in the body carries what is called antigens. And those antigens are substances that cause an immune reaction response in the body by identifying them in or on the cell. Think about it as kind of like a name tag to identify the cell. And sticking with that name tag example, sort of like this. We have two name tags here. We got one from McDonald's, as you can see, with Andrew, and then one from Subway, who belongs to, I guess, Ethan. Now, think about if you were to walk into your McDonald's shift, you're about to go flip some burgers, make some coffees, and you had the Subway name tag on. Your managers would probably look at you kind of funny. Same thing as if it was the other way. If you were to walk into your Subway shift, you're about to go be a great sandwich artist and make me my roast beef sandwich. You, wearing your McDonald's name tag, again, you might get some funny looks. and might even get kicked out, or maybe your manager will say, go home, get your correct name tag on, and come back. It's kind of like that. Your body has a response to these antigens on your blood. It doesn't always have to be them getting kicked out, but it's just a response to something. So why exactly do we have different blood types? Well, if your blood identifies the wrong antigen, it will release what is called antibodies. You may have heard this term before. Antibodies are proteins that bind to a foreign invader in your body and mark it for destruction. Think about it as like a search and destroy team for your body. So if you see the graphic on the left, the antibodies are actually the Y-shaped little proteins that are attacking that cell. It's a foreign invader. It's marking it, saying to the body, we don't want this here. We need to get rid of this. An example of something that you might find in your body that might need to be marked for destruction is similar to the graphic on the right. Now, I'm not going to go over the graphic on the right, but I will say it is the reason, that little cell is the reason why we have to do classes online. So you might hear some stuff in the news about antibodies and about the virus, but that is sort of what they're talking about. I'm not going to get into it in today's lesson, because I'm specifically going to be talking about the blood antigens, the antigens you find on your blood. There are two kinds, and they're also known as agglutinogens. These two agglutinogens are conveniently named A and B. Easy to remember. In your blood, you can either have one type of agglutinogen, both types of agglutinogens, or neither type of agglutinogen, and that results in 4 different kinds of blood. So you'd have type A blood, type B blood, type AB blood, which means that you have both the A and the B antigen, and the type O blood. And I think I forgot to mention this, but the type A blood would means you have, as you can see in the graphic below, you have just the A antigen. For the type B, you would have just the B antigen. AB, you have both. O blood, you have 0. Now you might be wondering, why does this matter? And that's a good question. When someone needs a blood transfusion or a donation, they can only accept certain types of blood depending on their body. But why is that the case? Why can't a person with type AB blood, for instance, give blood to somebody with type O blood? Or why can't somebody with type A blood give that blood to somebody with type B blood? And these are all great questions, and they will be answered shortly. And pretty much the answer is, it all comes down to the antibodies, not necessarily the antigens, though they do play a part. So remember when we talked about antibodies? If you don't remember that, feel free to pause, go back to that slide. But if you do remember, then whatever blood type you have, your body does not have the antibody for it. So for example, if you have type A blood, you do not have type A antibodies. Now, I want you to pause it for a second and think about why that is the case. Why is it that if you have type A blood, you would not have the type A antibodies? So you could pause it and think about that for a second. If you're ready to go, we will move on. If you had type A blood as well as type A antibodies, those antibodies would search and destroy your own blood. Instead of having the antibodies that attack your own blood, you have the antibodies that attack the other kinds of blood. So for instance, if you have type A blood, you would have the antibodies to the type B blood instead, which, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. You don't want your own body attacking your own blood. You need that blood. So you don't want your antibodies attacking your own blood, obviously. So instead, it replaces it with the antibodies for another kind of blood. So I asked you earlier, why can't somebody with type A blood give blood to somebody with type B blood? Think about that for a second. Do you have a better idea of why that might not be the case? If you don't, feel free to pause this video and think about that for a second. But if you do have a good idea, we'll move on. This wouldn't work because the person with type A blood has the antibodies for type B blood. If the person with type A blood gave blood to a person with type B blood in them, the antibodies in the blood would attack the type B blood cells. And what the reaction that occurs when this happens is the blood thickens and will eventually clot. Another word that you might see pretty commonly is coagulate. And if you see the graphic below, that's kind of what would happen. It would thicken, it would clot, it wouldn't run through your veins, and that causes major health problems. So I'll say this once again. When you have type A blood, you have the antibodies for type B. And a person with type A blood would give that person, to give blood to a person with type B, those antibodies would attack the type B blood. It would cause a clot, and so on and so on. And then that person would be in serious trouble, to say the least. So what we're going to do now is we are going to draw a little bit of a chart just to help you remember who can receive what kind of blood and how it all works. So what I want you to do now is I want you to take your piece of paper, your pen, and your straight edge, and I want you to draw something similar to what I have written here. As you can see on the top left of the whiteboard, I have color coordinated each, so type A, type B, and then type O, which we'll get into in a minute. But type A and B especially are different colors. You don't have to do this, but I do recommend it in case. So on the top row, you have the blood types, A, B, and O. Again, we'll get into A, B, and O in a little bit. But on the bottom, or the down the chart, I have antigens. It might be a little tough to read, so I'll just say it. Antigens, antibodies, what blood they can receive from, and who can they donate to. So for type A, we'll start with type A. Type A has the antigens for type A, obviously, and then you have the antibodies for type B, and we explain why that is the case. People with type A blood can receive blood from other people with type A and can donate to other people with type A. Now again, you can do this however you want. I chose to do little drawings. You don't have to. You can just write antigen A to antigen B, but that's kind of what I want, the gist of what I want to look like. Now let's go over to type B. Pretty similar to type A. It's almost the opposite in a lot of ways. So the type B blood has the B antigens and the A antibodies. It can receive blood from type B, and it can donate blood to other type B people. Now you're probably thinking, what is up with A, B, and O? We kind of discussed them earlier, but we'll go into a little more detail right now. So you have two other kinds of blood. You have AB blood and type O blood. So how do they work? Who can they donate to, and who can they receive from? So we'll start off with type AB blood. If you have type AB blood, that means you have both the A and the B antigens attached to your blood. If this is the case, what antibodies would you have? So if you have both antigens, what antibodies might you have? If you want to pause this video to think about that, go for it. If you want to have some help from the graphic to the right side of the screen, go for it. But if you kind of have an idea, we'll continue on. So people with type AB blood don't have any antibodies. They do not have the A or the B antibodies. And that is because they have both antigens. So even if they had one kind of antibody, those antibodies would attack its own blood. It would coagulate, thicken, clot, serious health problems. We don't want that. So that's why it's just simply no antibodies at all. This lack of antibodies makes type AB blood particularly unique because it can receive blood from anybody, giving people with that blood type the name the universal receiver or recipient. However, most of the time people with type AB blood receive type AB blood just to play it safe. So if they need a donation for whatever reason, they'll probably get it from someone with type AB blood just to play it safe. It can be done, but in the case for this class, we'll just consider it type AB can only really receive from other type AB. There is, of course, it is possible, but most of the time they do tend to play it safe. So just kind of keep that in the back of your head, especially if you're answering questions. So we just looked at AB, so let's add to our chart. So AB has the AB antigens, no antibodies. So it can receive from AB as well as AB. That sounded really confusing, but it can receive from type A, type B, and type AB blood. And it can also donate to other AB. So again, it is a risk. It still can be done. Because we know a little bit more about type AB, we can also add to the other charts, the other side of the chart as well. So for under AB blood, you can write that it can also receive donations from type AB. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm saying AB and A and blood a lot. It can get a little bit confusing. So again, if you're not sure, feel free to pause this video at any time, rewind, email me if you're still confused about anything. Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the last, but definitely not least, type O blood. So if type AB blood has both AB antigens in it, what about type O? And people with type O blood don't have any antigens. So their blood just doesn't have any antigens. The code for making antigens just didn't work for these people, and they do not have any antigens. So that means, if there's no antigens, that means they have all of the antibodies. It's almost the exact opposite of type AB blood, where AB blood had no antibodies and all the antigens. Type O blood has no antigens but all of the antibodies. So similar to type AB blood, this makes type O blood unique as well. Because type O blood does not have any antigens, it can be given to any blood type. And you'll often hear people with type O blood be referred to as the universal donor. The lack of antigens means that whatever antibody is already there has nothing to attach to. This means that people with type O blood can only receive blood from other people with type O. Does anyone have any idea why that might be the case? Again, pause it. Think about it for a second. Why is it that people with type O blood can only receive blood from other people with type O? However, they can give that blood out to anybody else, which is why they're the universal donor. So pause it. Think about it for a minute. If you're unpausing it and coming back to us, we'll continue. So this is because people with type O blood have all the antibodies. If anybody with antigens in their blood were to give their blood to somebody with type O blood, the antibodies would then attack it. So if somebody with type A were to donate to somebody with type O, that means that their antigens would get attacked by their antibodies because they have all of the antibodies in there. So again, type O is in a very interesting situation similar to type AB, where they can donate to anybody, but they can only receive from their own blood kind. So now that we know a little bit more about type O, let's add to our table a little bit. So type O blood has no antigens, but it has both antibodies. It can only receive from people with type O, but again, it can donate to anybody. So you can also add to all the other kinds of blood that it can receive type O blood, but unfortunately it can't donate to people with type O. So that is the finished product so far of our table. Again, feel free to pause, rewind, whatever you have to do. I want you to get this table down. It will help you out soon, especially for answering questions. So before we move on, because things are about to get a little bit trickier, but before we move on, I just want to go over one more time what exactly we've learned so far. So people with type A blood, they have the A antigen, the B antibody, they can receive from type A, and they can donate to people with type A or type AB. B blood, it's almost the exact opposite. The B antigen with the A antibody, they can receive from the type B, people with type B, and they can donate to other type Bs as well as type AB. On the other side, type AB and O, almost very similar to type A and AB, very similar to type A and type B in the sense that they're almost opposites. Because type AB has both antigens and no antibodies, they're considered the universal receiver, and they can only donate to other people with type AB. And then type O has no antigens, all antibodies. They can only receive from type O, and they are considered the universal donor, so they can give their blood out to anybody, which makes them particularly valuable when it comes to blood donations. So I just wanted to do one quick sort of check your understanding question. Going back to my injury before the lecture started, if Mr. Hlady, me, had type AB blood and needed a blood donation, who could give it to him and why? So feel free to pause the video and think about that question. If I have type AB blood, I need a donation, who can I get it from, and why? So again, feel free to pause this video, think about it for a second. If you have your answer in your head, because I'm type AB blood, I can technically receive blood from anybody in the class, though I think in my case, I would probably want somebody with type AB blood. I want to keep it safe. I want to play it safe. I want to be around here for just a little longer. We still got to finish this class off. So the answer is I can receive it from anybody, but personally, this is my personal choice, I prefer somebody with type AB blood. I want to keep it safe. All right, so things are about to get a little bit trickier, not really too much. So far we learned there's 4 types of blood, types A, B, AB, and O. However, there are actually 8 types of blood. Does anybody have any idea what the other 4 might be? So again, pause your video, think about this for a second. Maybe you know already. I'm sure blood types have been said a lot in medical shows. So maybe some of you have an idea. But we're going to learn in just a second what exactly makes that other 4 kinds of blood. And that is this little thing called the Rh factor. So on top of the antigens that your blood already has, there is another set of antigens that work differently from the A and B antigens, and that is known as the rhesus factor, or as we'll call it, just the Rh factor, what is commonly known as. The Rh factor is a set of proteins that can be found on the surface of the blood. There are actually, I believe, 45 proteins, and the thing with this, the Rh factor, is you either have all of them or you have none of them. So you're all 45 on the surface of your blood, or you have none of them. So if you have these proteins, you are considered Rh positive. And if you don't have any of these proteins, you are considered Rh negative. So maybe this is coming back to some people here. This is kind of just a little bit of a diagram of kind of what it looks like. Someone with Rh blood, or Rh positive blood, has an Rh factor on their blood. Rh negative does not have any. So if the Rh factor is sort of built on top of the system we already have with the antigens and the antibodies, that means we have 8 kinds of blood, because there's 2 things that are going to determine your blood type: what type of antigen you have and whether or not you have the Rh factor. This means your blood type can be either type A negative, type A positive, type B negative, type B positive, type AB negative, type AB positive, or type O negative, and then type O positive. So I guess I kind of lied a little bit. There really isn't, it's not type AB, AB, and O, and then 4 other kinds. It's sort of just that group split into 2, which makes 8 kinds of blood. Here's just a little diagram, just to visualize it a little bit easier. So somebody with type AB positive blood, has everything on their blood. They have A antigen, B antigen, and that Rh factor. AB negative has the antigens with no Rh factor. And you can see this diagram. It shows it in a visual way. I really like this diagram, so if you want to pause it, write it down, or draw it for yourself, feel free. I do kind of recommend it. So we talked about donating blood and who can receive from and who can give to. How exactly does this Rh factor play into that? So everything that we learned so far about blood donations is still correct. We still have the antigens and the antibodies. That's still correct. You don't have to throw that out the window. Think about it still. However, we just have to add this new factor into the mix. It still depends on whatever antigens and antibodies you have or don't have. So how exactly does this Rh factor play into this? So if you are considered Rh positive, you can give and accept from people with Rh positive and Rh negative blood. If you're Rh negative, it is better to only accept other Rh negative blood donors. Does anybody have any idea why that might be the case? Give this video a pause, think about it for a second. Why is it that Rh positive blood can give and accept any kind of blood, whereas Rh negative blood can really only accept Rh negative? Is it because the Rh positive is just more happy-go-lucky and is willing to accept and give at any time, and Rh negative is in the corner pouting and it doesn't want any other kind of blood? That's a good guess, but that's not exactly correct. All right, so if you have the Rh negative blood, you can technically accept Rh positive blood, but only once. And you might be thinking, why exactly is the human body so weird like that? Part of that question I can't answer. It's just who we are. But I can answer sort of part of it, at least. This is because if you receive Rh positive blood and you're Rh negative, your body will develop antibodies for that Rh positive blood. So getting another similar donation would not work. So if you're somebody with Rh negative blood, you can receive an Rh positive blood donation, but only one time. So kind of for the remainder in this class, I would recommend that whenever we're thinking about questions or answering questions regarding negative and positive, just assume that the person that's receiving the blood donation has gotten cannot receive Rh positive blood. We'll just throw that out there. For people with Rh negative can only receive from Rh negative. This is a bit of a technicality, but for answering questions, let's just keep it simple. Rh positive can accept anybody. Rh negative can only accept Rh negative. Got it? Good. Again, feel free to pause and rewind, but if you are good, we will continue. So now what? It's a good question. Let's think about what we know. We know what blood types are compatible with other blood types based on antigens and antibodies. We know that the Rh positive blood can accept either Rh positive or Rh negative blood, and we know that Rh negative blood can only accept blood from other Rh negative blood for most of the time, but again, we'll just consider it as, just say that they can only accept negative to negative for the most part. So let's wrap this all around, tie it back together in this nice little chart that I got off the internet that I think really outlines which blood types are compatible with what. So just looking at the top one, type A positive, if you go back to our chart, it can receive from type A and type AB, it can donate to type A positive and AB positive. It can receive from positive and negative. Same thing with the type B positive. It's kind of the same thing. It's just this, almost think about this Rh factor as adding another layer to it. So what we said before is still technically, it's still correct, but adding this layer, it complicates it just a little bit, but I think you'll get the hang of it. And that's why I recommend that you give this video a pause, copy down this table. I think it will be very, very useful. I could not find a table, and I think a table would kind of be too confusing with the antigens, the antibodies, and the Rh positive and negative factor. So that's why I recommend that you use both of these tables to answer any kind of question. So keep both of them. They're both really important. This one is a little just more laid out, plain and simple. The other one, we kind of delved into the antigens and the antibodies. But like I said before, I recommend using both tables because you are going to have to answer some questions, and I do have a couple right here. So Eric was in a serious accident and needs a blood donation. His brother Marcus is willing to donate, but neither of them know their blood type. Should Marcus still donate his blood? Why or why not? What would happen if they were not compatible? And the big point I want to make is why. A lot of these questions, you could simply probably answer yes or no, or you can answer the type of blood that they're compatible with or whatever, or the types of blood in most cases. But I want to know why. I want you to be using examples. I want you to use words like antigens. I want to hear antibodies. I want to hear the Rh factor, positive or negative. I don't want you to simply put the answer. I want a reason as to why it wouldn't work. The second part of that question is, turns out Eric has type AB positive blood, but they still do not know his brother's blood type. Should Marcus still donate his blood? Why or why not? So this one, it's not necessarily a simple yes or no question. I want you to still write down why this might be either a good idea or a bad idea, depending on what you think. And there's two more questions here. Stephanie has type O negative blood. She's encouraged to give blood at her local blood drive. Why should Stephanie donate her blood? Besides the fact that, of course, it's a good thing to do. So again, don't just simply write, oh, I don't want to hear a one-sentence answer. I want you to explain why this is a good idea or not a good idea. And then the final question here, Jordan needs a blood donation. All four of her friends are willing to donate. Jordan has type B positive blood. Her friend Travis has type A positive blood. Sarah has type AB negative blood. Jake has type B negative blood, and Skylar has type O positive blood. Which one of her friends can donate and why? Again, why being the main point of that. So you have those four questions. Submit them to our Google Classroom whenever you get the chance by the end of the day. And again, if you have any questions, first things first, I recommend that you go back through this video if there wasn't anything you weren't sure about before you go and email me. But again, if you've gone through this video, you still have no idea, feel free to email me. I will answer any questions. Obviously, again, this is not the ideal way of learning, unfortunately, but it's what we're going to have to do for the time being. So feel free to rewind. Feel free to watch this multiple times if you need to take advantage of this opportunity, please. And that is everything that I have here. So everybody, have a great day, and we will see you with the next lesson. Thank you.